The autumn morning at Windsor Castle felt heavier than usual. King Charles III stood at his study window, watching the golden leaves fall like his crumbling world. In his trembling hands, he held a letter that would change everything. The royal seal had been broken, and inside were photographs and documents that made his stomach turn. For 75 years, Charles had lived his life under public scrutiny. He had endured criticism, scandal, and heartbreak, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The woman he had waited decades to marry, the woman who had stood by his side through his darkest hours, had betrayed him in the most devastating way possible. The letter was from someone calling themselves a friend of the crown. The handwriting was elegant, almost mocking in its formality. It contained evidence that Camilla had been secretly meeting with foreign dignitaries, selling royal secrets for enormous sums of money. Bank statements showed deposits of millions of pounds into hidden accounts. Photos captured her in private conversations with known intelligence operatives from hostile nations. Charles sat heavily in his leather chair, the same chair his mother had gifted him years ago. His hands shook as he spread the evidence across his mahogany desk. There were recordings of phone conversations where Camilla discussed royal security protocols, family health information, and even state secrets that only the highest-ranking royals would know. The betrayal cut deeper because of their history. Charles had sacrificed so much for Camilla. He had endured public humiliation during his first marriage, waded through years of scandal, and finally found happiness when they married in 2005. She had been his anchor during the difficult transition after his mother's death. Now, discovering that she had been using her position for personal gain felt like a dagger through his heart. Private Secretary Sir Clive Alderton knocked softly on the door before entering. His usually composed face showed concern as he noticed the scattered papers. Charles looked up, his eyes red with exhaustion and betrayal. "Your Majesty, the morning briefing is ready. Prime Minister Sunak is waiting for your call about the Commonwealth Summit." Charles waved weakly. "Cancel everything, Clive. We have a situation that requires immediate attention. Close the door and sit down." Sir Clive had served the royal family for decades and had seen many crises, but the gravity in the king's voice made him uneasy. As he closed the heavy oak door, he noticed the formal documents spread across the desk, the official seals, and the photographs that made his face pale. "How long have you known about this?" Charles asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your Majesty, I'm not sure what you're referring to." Charles pushed one of the bank statements across the desk. "Camilla has been selling our secrets, Clive. Look at these transactions. £12 million deposited over the past 2 years into accounts in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands. The dates match perfectly with her private trips abroad." The revelation hit Sir Clive like a physical blow. He had personally arranged many of those trips, thinking they were charitable missions or personal holidays. Now, seeing the evidence, everything took on a sinister new meaning. "The coronation," Charles continued, his voice growing stronger with anger. "She knew every detail of our security arrangements. The state banquet last month where we hosted the Japanese emperor. She was photographed the next day meeting with someone the intelligence services have been watching for years." The autumn wind rattled the castle windows, creating an eerie soundtrack to the unfolding drama. Charles stood and walked to a portrait of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. Her steady gaze seemed to offer silent support in his moment of crisis. "What she doesn't know," Charles said, turning back to face Sir Clive, "is that we've been watching her for the past 6 months. MI5 suspected something when classified information started appearing in foreign intelligence reports. They asked me to monitor her activities without revealing their investigation." Sir Clive felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. "Your Majesty, if this becomes public, it will destroy the monarchy," Charles finished. "But if we do nothing, she'll continue to sell our secrets. She's already compromised our relationships with 3 Commonwealth nations. The Prime Minister will demand answers and Parliament will want a full investigation." The morning sun disappeared behind thick clouds, casting the study in shadow. Charles moved to his private safe and retrieved another folder marked Top Secret. Inside were more photographs, including ones of Camilla meeting with Russian oligarchs and Chinese intelligence officers. "She's been planning this for years, Clive. Some of these meetings date back to before our marriage. She married me to get access to state secrets, not out of love." The realization was crushing. Their entire relationship, built over decades of friendship and romance, had been a carefully orchestrated deception. Charles thought about all the times he had shared sensitive information with her, trusting her as his wife and future queen consort. "There's more," Charles said grimly. "She's been blackmailing other members of the royal family. Princess Anne discovered that Camilla has compromising information about several cousins and their private lives. She's been using it to ensure their silence about her activities." Sir Clive reviewed the documents with growing alarm. The scope of Camilla's betrayal extended far beyond selling secrets. She had created an entire network of manipulation and control within the royal family itself. "Your Majesty, what are your instructions? This cannot wait much longer. The intelligence services are preparing to move forward with arrests." Charles returned to his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 75 years. The crown had never felt heavier than it did at this moment. He thought about his sons, William and Harry, and how this scandal would affect them. He thought about the British people who had accepted Camilla as their queen consort. Schedule an emergency meeting with the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Prime Minister, and the head of MI5 for this afternoon. "And Clive, start preparing divorce papers. I want this handled quietly and quickly, but it must be handled. The monarchy will survive this, but our marriage will not." As Sir Clive left to make the necessary arrangements, Charles remained alone with the evidence of his wife's betrayal. Outside, the autumn leaves continued to fall, and inside the castle, a king prepared to make one of the most difficult decisions of his reign. The emergency meeting convened in the most secure room at Buckingham Palace that afternoon. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak arrived looking grim, followed by the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, and the director of MI5, whose identity remained classified even among the highest circles of government. The room was swept for listening devices twice before anyone spoke. King Charles entered wearing a simple dark suit instead of his usual royal attire. The weight of the morning's revelations had aged him visibly. He took his seat at the head of the polished conference table, the evidence folders neatly arranged before him. "Gentlemen, what I'm about to share with you threatens the very foundation of the British monarchy," Charles began, his voice steady despite the emotional turmoil. "My wife, Queen Consort Camilla, has been operating as a foreign agent for the past several years." The Prime Minister's face went pale. As the head of government, he understood immediately what this meant for national security. The Archbishop shifted uncomfortably, knowing the religious and constitutional implications of a royal divorce. The MI5 director opened his own classified folder. "Your Majesty, we've been building a case against the Queen Consort for 8 months. The evidence is overwhelming. She's been in contact with intelligence services from Russia, China, and North Korea. The information she's provided has compromised 3 ongoing operations and put British agents at risk." Charles spread the bank statements across the table. £15 million in the past 2 years alone. The money trail leads to shell companies connected to foreign governments. She's been selling everything from our family's medical records to state dinner guest lists. Archbishop Welby struggled to process the information. "Your Majesty, the coronation oath. She swore before God to serve the crown faithfully. This is not just treason. It's a violation of the most sacred vows." The Prime Minister leaned forward. "Charles, I need to understand the timeline. How long have you known about this?" "I suspected something 6 months ago when classified information from our private conversations started appearing in intelligence reports. MI5 approached me to cooperate with their investigation. Today I received irrefutable proof." The king pulled out a recording device. This conversation was captured 3 days ago. Camilla was meeting with a Russian operative at a private club in Mayfair. The room fell silent as Camilla's voice filled the air through the speakers. Her tone was businesslike and cold as she discussed the security arrangements for an upcoming state visit. She laughed callously when the operative joked about British intelligence being pathetically easy to fool. "She's arranging to photograph classified documents from my private study next week," Charles continued after stopping the recording. "MI5 has been feeding her false information to track where it goes, and it consistently ends up in hostile hands." The director of MI5 added more disturbing details. "We've discovered that she recruited other palace staff members. 3 footmen and 2 ladies-in-waiting have been passing information to her. The network is extensive, and we believe it reaches into other royal households as well." Prime Minister Sunak understood the political catastrophe this could create. If this becomes public before we control the narrative, It will destroy public trust in the entire institution of monarchy. Parliament will demand a full investigation and the tabloids will have a field day. Charles nodded grimly. Which is why we need to act swiftly and decisively. I'm requesting an immediate divorce on grounds of treason against the crown. The marriage must be dissolved before any formal charges are filed. The Archbishop looked troubled. Your Majesty, ecclesiastically speaking, this creates unprecedented challenges. You were crowned with Camilla as your queen consort. Dissolving the marriage raises questions about the validity of her participation in the coronation ceremony. That's exactly why we need to move quickly, the MI5 director interrupted. She's planning something significant. Our surveillance indicates she's preparing to flee the country next week. We believe she's going to release a cache of extremely damaging information as leverage to ensure her safe escape. Charles felt his blood run cold. What kind of information? Personal details about William and Catherine's marriage, private medical information about your grandchildren, and most dangerously, the complete security protocols for all royal residences. If this information reaches the wrong hands, it could put your entire family at physical risk. The room fell into heavy silence as everyone absorbed the implications. The betrayal wasn't just personal or political. It was potentially life-threatening to the royal family's children. Prime Minister Sunak spoke carefully. Charles, I need to ask directly. Are you certain about proceeding with divorce rather than attempting to handle this quietly? Once we start legal proceedings, there's no going back. Charles stood and walked to the window overlooking the palace gardens. Rishi, she betrayed not just me, but every British citizen. She sold secrets that put our soldiers at risk. She compromised our national security for money. There's no coming back from that. The Archbishop tried one more time. Your Majesty, perhaps we could arrange for her to quietly retire from public life, citing health issues. No. Charles's voice was firm. That would make the crown complicit in treason. The monarchy has survived 800 years because we've maintained our integrity, even when it cost us personally. I won't be the king who compromised that principle. The MI5 director opened another file. There's something else, Your Majesty. We've intercepted communications suggesting she's been blackmailing members of Parliament as well. She has compromising information about cabinet ministers and opposition leaders that she's been using to influence government policy. The scope of Camilla's betrayal continued to expand. Each revelation made it clearer that this wasn't just about royal secrets, but about a systematic corruption of British governance. How many people know about this investigation? Charles asked. Fewer than a dozen in the security services, plus the 4 of us in this room, the director replied. We've kept the circle tight to prevent leaks. Charles made his decision. Here's what we're going to do. I want divorce papers filed tomorrow morning citing irreconcilable differences initially, with the treason evidence sealed and ready if needed. I want Camilla's access to all royal residences and classified materials revoked immediately, and I want her monitored 24 hours a day until she's in custody. Prime Minister Sunak nodded. I'll speak with the Attorney General tonight. We'll need special prosecutors for this case and we'll have to coordinate with international partners whose security she's compromised. The Archbishop asked, What about the public announcement? How do we explain the sudden divorce? We don't, not initially, Charles replied. We announced that due to personal health matters, Camilla is stepping back from royal duties indefinitely. The divorce proceedings will be described as a private family matter. The truth will come out during the trial, but by then we'll have controlled the initial narrative. As the meeting concluded, each man understood the historical significance of what was unfolding. The monarchy had faced scandals before, but never treason from within its most inner circle. Charles stood to leave, then turned back to his advisors. Gentlemen, what happens in the next few days will determine whether the British monarchy survives this crisis with its dignity intact. We owe it to the British people to handle this with complete transparency once the security concerns are addressed. Outside the secure meeting room, palace life continued normally. Staff members went about their duties, unaware that their queen consort was about to become the most wanted woman in Britain. The next morning arrived with an unusual tension throughout all royal residences. Camilla woke at Highgrove House unaware that her world was about to collapse completely. She followed her normal routine, having breakfast in bed while reviewing her schedule for the upcoming week. Her calendar showed a charity luncheon, a visit to a children's hospital, and what appeared to be a private appointment marked simply as HC 3 p.m. Thursday. Meanwhile, at Windsor Castle, King Charles was signing the most difficult documents of his reign. The divorce papers lay before him, along with orders to revoke Camilla's security clearance, access cards, and official titles. His private secretary had worked through the night to ensure everything was legally perfect and irreversible. "Your Majesty," Sir Clive said softly, "the legal team confirms that once you sign these documents, there's a 72-hour window before they become public record. That gives us time to coordinate with security services." Charles picked up his pen with steady hands. His signature on the first document officially ended his marriage to Camilla Parker Bowles. The second document stripped her of the title Queen Consort and all associated privileges. The third authorized MI5 to place her under immediate surveillance and house arrest when necessary. At that exact moment, Camilla's phone buzzed with a text message that appeared to be from her hairdresser confirming an appointment. In reality, it was a coded message from her Russian contact warning her that British intelligence was closing in. The message instructed her to activate her emergency escape plan immediately. Camilla's demeanor changed instantly. Years of training kicked in as she began executing protocols she hoped she'd never need to use. She calmly told her personal protection officer that she needed to visit her sister in the countryside and would be staying overnight. She packed a small bag with essential items, including a passport hidden in a secret compartment that bore a different name. The protection officer, unaware of the developing situation, made routine arrangements for her departure. What he didn't know was that MI5 had already been monitoring Camilla's communications for months and was tracking her every move through hidden devices in her jewelry and clothing. As Camilla's car left Highgrove, she was followed by an entire surveillance team coordinated from a mobile command center. The operation, codenamed Crown Jewel, had been planned for months and involved dozens of agents positioned along every possible route she might take. Back at Buckingham Palace, King Charles was meeting with Prince William to break the devastating news to his son. William arrived thinking it was a routine briefing about upcoming royal duties. When he saw his father's grave expression and the legal documents on the desk, he immediately knew something was seriously wrong. "William, sit down. What I'm about to tell you will shock you, but you need to know before it becomes public." Charles explained the entire situation, showing William the evidence of Camilla's betrayal. William's face went through a range of emotions: disbelief, anger, and finally a grim determination to protect his family. "Father, what about George, Charlotte, and Louis? If she has information about them, that's already handled. Catherine and the children are being moved to a secure location with increased protection. We're taking no chances with their safety." William studied the bank statements and photographs spread across his father's desk. "I never trusted her completely, but I never imagined anything like this." "How long has she been planning this?" "According to MI5, possibly from before our marriage. It appears she may have been a long-term asset, cultivated specifically to infiltrate the royal family." The realization that his stepmother had been living a complete lie for nearly 2 decades was staggering. William thought about all the family moments she had shared, all the state secrets she had been privy to, all the trust his father had placed in her. Meanwhile, Camilla had stopped at what appeared to be her sister's cottage in the Cotswolds. However, surveillance teams quickly realized this was a safe house equipped with sophisticated communication equipment and document destruction capabilities. Hidden cameras captured her burning papers and making encrypted phone calls to unknown contacts. The MI5 Operations Center was buzzing with activity as agents tracked her movements in real time. "She's preparing to run," the director informed King Charles via secure phone. "We have evidence she's scheduled to meet a private jet at a small airfield in Gloucestershire at midnight. The flight plan shows a destination of Moscow." Charles felt a cold anger building. Even caught in the act, Camilla was still trying to escape justice and potentially take more secrets with her to Britain's enemies. "What's the plan to stop her?" Charles asked. "We're going to let her get to the airfield. We want to capture her contacts as well, and we need her to lead us to them. The aircraft will be intercepted by RAF jets once it enters international airspace if necessary, but we're hoping to end this on British soil." As evening approached, Camilla made her move. She left the safe house in a different vehicle with fake license plates, driven by someone who was clearly not her sister. The surveillance team followed at a distance, coordinating with local police to block all possible escape routes from the airfield. At Buckingham Palace, Charles was giving Prince Harry a similar briefing via secure video call. Harry's reaction was even more explosive than William's had been. "She played us all, didn't she?" Harry said, his anger evident even through the digital connection. "All those years of family gatherings, all the times she acted like she cared about us. Harry, I need you to stay in California for now. We don't know if she has contacts trying to get to you or the children there. Increase your security and trust no one new who approaches you." The gravity of the situation was becoming clear to both sons. This wasn't just about their father's marriage. It was about the safety of the entire royal family and the security of the British nation. As midnight approached, Camilla arrived at the small airfield outside Gloucester. Hidden in the darkness, MI5 agents watched as she met with two men who appeared to be foreign operatives. Night vision equipment captured her handing over a briefcase in exchange for what looked like payment and travel documents. "This is it," the MI5 director whispered into his radio. "Crown Jewel is a go. All units move in now." Powerful spotlights suddenly illuminated the entire airfield as dozens of armed agents emerged from hiding positions. The private jet's engines were already running, but there was nowhere to go as police vehicles blocked the runway from both ends. Camilla's face showed shock and then resignation as she realized her carefully planned escape had failed. Years of deception were ending in handcuffs on a cold English airfield, with the woman who had been Queen Consort of Britain just hours earlier now facing charges of high treason. As the arrest unfolded, King Charles sat in his study at Windsor Castle, watching the operation through live feeds from the security services. The woman he had loved and married was being arrested as a foreign spy, and with her arrest, one of the most devastating betrayals in royal history was finally coming to an end. The constitutional crisis that would follow was just beginning, but Charles felt a sense of relief that the truth was finally emerging. The monarchy would survive this scandal, but it would never be quite the same again. The days following King Charles's shocking announcement brought unprecedented chaos to Britain and the wider world. International markets plummeted as investors worried about the stability of British institutions. Foreign governments demanded immediate briefings about what classified information might have been compromised. Meanwhile, the British public struggled to process the reality that their Queen Consort had been a foreign spy. In the high-security prison where Camilla was being held, investigators continued uncovering the staggering scope of her betrayal. Digital forensics experts found encrypted files on her devices containing detailed profiles of every member of the royal family, including psychological assessments that could be used for blackmail or manipulation. She was building dossiers on everyone, the chief investigator explained to MI5 Director General. "We found files on the Wales children's behavioral patterns, Princess Anne's private medical treatments, even detailed analysis of Prince Harry's mental health struggles. This information could have been used to manipulate or harm anyone in the family." The revelation that Camilla had been systematically profiling the royal children was particularly disturbing. Child psychologists were brought in to assess what kind of long-term surveillance the children might have been subjected to without their parents' knowledge. At Anmer Hall, Prince William and Catherine were trying to explain to their children why their step-grandmother had suddenly disappeared and why they needed extra security guards. 8-year-old Prince Louis asked the question that broke his parents' hearts. "Didn't Granny Camilla love us?" Catherine struggled to find age-appropriate words to explain betrayal and espionage to children who had always trusted Camilla completely. "Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices that hurt people they should protect," she managed to say. The international implications were becoming clearer as intelligence agencies shared information. Camilla's betrayal had compromised British relationships with allies and endangered ongoing operations in multiple countries. 3 British intelligence officers had to be evacuated from dangerous postings after their identities were compromised. Russia's response to the scandal was telling. While officially denying any involvement, Russian state media began broadcasting detailed stories about British royal decadence and institutional corruption that could only have come from inside information. The propaganda value of having compromised the British monarchy was enormous for hostile nations. In Parliament, emergency sessions were called to address the constitutional crisis. Opposition leaders demanded investigations into how such a massive security failure could have occurred. Some radical MPs even called for the abolition of the monarchy, arguing that the institution was too vulnerable to foreign manipulation. Prime Minister Sunak defended the king during a heated parliamentary debate. His Majesty was the victim of one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations in modern history. The blame lies entirely with those who orchestrated this decades-long deception, not with the king, who was betrayed by someone he trusted completely. Archbishop of Canterbury faced his own crisis as religious leaders questioned whether Camilla's coronation had been valid if she was already committing treason. Emergency meetings with canon lawyers resulted in the unprecedented decision to formally nullify her religious consecration as queen consort. Meanwhile, the full extent of the blackmail network was being revealed. Investigators found evidence that Camilla had been manipulating government policy by threatening to expose the private lives of cabinet ministers and MPs. 3 junior ministers had already resigned after admitting they had been compromised. The scandal reached international proportions when it was discovered that Camilla had sold information about private conversations between King Charles and other world leaders. Phone calls with President Biden, President Macron, and other allied leaders had been recorded and passed to hostile intelligence services. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly was forced to conduct damage control with dozens of world leaders, many of whom were furious that their private communications with the British king had been compromised. Some nations temporarily suspended intelligence sharing agreements with Britain until new security protocols could be established. Back in prison, Camilla seemed to be enjoying the chaos she had caused. During one interrogation session, she made a chilling statement. "Charles always said I helped modernize the monarchy. I certainly did that, didn't I?" Her lack of remorse was evident as she described years of careful planning and execution. "You people still don't understand. This wasn't just about money or ideology. This was about power. I had more real power as a foreign agent than I ever would have had as just another royal wife." The psychological evaluation of Camilla revealed a narcissistic personality with no genuine emotional attachment to the royal family she had infiltrated. Expert psychologists concluded that she had likely viewed her marriage to Charles as purely transactional from the beginning. King Charles was struggling with the personal devastation while trying to maintain his public duties. In private moments with his closest advisors, the depth of his pain was evident. "I trusted her with everything," he told Sir Clive. "She knew about my health issues, my fears for the future, my concerns about my sons. All of it was just intelligence gathering to her." The revelation about his health was particularly concerning. Medical experts worried that stress-related information about the king's condition might be used against him by foreign powers seeking to destabilize Britain during a vulnerable period. Prince William stepped up to take on additional royal duties as his father processed the betrayal. The Prince of Wales proved to be a steadying influence during the crisis, appearing calm and confident in public, while the monarchy faced its greatest challenge in generations. Public opinion was divided. While many Britons rallied around the king as a victim of an elaborate deception, others questioned how such a massive security failure could have occurred. Polls showed declining support for the monarchy among younger Britons who felt the institution was too secretive and vulnerable to foreign manipulation. The media frenzy was unlike The days following King Charles's shocking announcement brought unprecedented chaos to Britain and the wider world. International markets plummeted as investors worried about the stability of British institutions. Foreign governments demanded immediate briefings about what classified information might have been compromised. Meanwhile, the British public struggled to process the reality that their queen consort had been a foreign spy. In the high-security prison where Camilla was being held, investigators continued uncovering the staggering scope of her betrayal. Digital forensics experts found encrypted files on her devices containing detailed profiles of every member of the royal family, including psychological assessments that could be used for blackmail or manipulation. She was building dossiers on everyone, the chief investigator explained to MI5 Director General. "We found files on the Wales children's behavioral patterns, Princess Anne's private medical treatments, even detailed analysis of Prince Harry's mental health struggles. This information could have been used to manipulate or harm anyone in the family." The revelation that Camilla had been systematically profiling the royal children was particularly disturbing. Child psychologists were brought in to assess what kind of long-term surveillance the children might have been subjected to, without their parents' knowledge. At Anmer Hall, Prince William and Catherine were trying to explain to their children why their step-grandmother had suddenly disappeared and why they needed extra security guards. 8-year-old Prince Louis asked the question that broke his parents' hearts. Didn't Granny Camilla love us? Catherine struggled to find age-appropriate words to explain betrayal and espionage to children who had always trusted Camilla completely. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices that hurt people they should protect, she managed to say. The international implications were becoming clearer as intelligence agencies shared information. Camilla's betrayal had compromised British relationships with allies and endangered ongoing operations in multiple countries. 3 British intelligence officers had to be evacuated from dangerous postings after their identities were compromised. Russia's response to the scandal was telling. While officially denying any involvement, Russian state media began broadcasting detailed stories about British royal decadence and institutional corruption that could only have come from inside information. The propaganda value of having compromised the British monarchy was enormous for hostile nations. In Parliament, emergency sessions were called to address the constitutional crisis. Opposition leaders demanded investigations into how such a massive security failure could have occurred. Some radical MPs even called for the abolition of the monarchy, arguing that the institution was too vulnerable to foreign manipulation. Prime Minister Sunak defended the king during a heated parliamentary debate. His Majesty was the victim of one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations in modern history. The blame lies entirely with those who orchestrated this decades-long deception, not with the king who was betrayed by someone he trusted completely. The Archbishop of Canterbury faced his own crisis as religious leaders questioned whether Camilla's coronation had been valid if she was already committing treason. Emergency meetings with canon lawyers resulted in the unprecedented decision to formally nullify her religious consecration as queen consort. Meanwhile, the full extent of the Blackmail network was being revealed. Investigators found evidence that Camilla had been manipulating government policy by threatening to expose the private lives of cabinet ministers and MPs. 3 junior ministers had already resigned after admitting they had been compromised. The scandal reached international proportions when it was discovered that Camilla had sold information about private conversations between King Charles and other world leaders. Phone calls with President Biden, President Macron, and other allied leaders had been recorded and passed to hostile intelligence services. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly was forced to conduct damage control with dozens of world leaders, many of whom were furious that their private communications with the British king had been compromised. Some nations temporarily suspended intelligence sharing agreements with Britain until new security protocols could be established. Back in prison, Camilla seemed to be enjoying the chaos she had caused. During one interrogation session, she made a chilling statement. Charles always said I helped modernize the monarchy. I certainly did that, didn't I? Her lack of remorse was evident as she described years of careful planning and execution. You people still don't understand. This wasn't just about money or ideology. This was about power. I had more real power as a foreign agent than I ever would have had as just another royal wife. The psychological evaluation of Camilla revealed a narcissistic personality with no genuine emotional attachment to the royal family she had infiltrated. Expert psychologists concluded that she had likely viewed her marriage to Charles as purely transactional from the beginning. King Charles was struggling with the personal devastation while trying to maintain his public duties. In private moments with his closest advisors, the depth of his pain was evident. I trusted her with everything, he told Sir Clive. She knew about my health issues, my fears for the future, my concerns about my sons. All of it was just intelligence gathering to her. The revelation about his health was particularly concerning. Medical experts worried that stress-related information about the king's condition might be used against him by foreign powers seeking to destabilize Britain during a vulnerable period. Prince William stepped up to take on additional royal duties as his father processed the betrayal. The Prince of Wales proved to be a steadying influence during the crisis, appearing calm and confident in public while the monarchy faced its greatest challenge in generations. Public opinion was divided. While many Britons rallied around the king as a victim of an elaborate deception, others questioned how such a massive security failure could have occurred. Polls showed declining support for the monarchy among younger Britons who felt the institution was too secretive and vulnerable to foreign manipulation. The media frenzy was unlike anything seen since Princess Diana's death. International news crews camped outside Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, and the prison where Camilla was being held. Every detail of the investigation was scrutinized, analyzed, and debated on television programs around the world. Tabloid newspapers had a field day with headlines like "The Spy Who Loved Me" and "Queen of Spies." However, the serious press focused on the broader implications for national security and constitutional government. The Times published a series of editorials examining how democratic institutions could protect themselves from such sophisticated infiltration. The investigation revealed that Camilla's network extended beyond Britain. Similar operations were discovered in other Commonwealth nations, where local contacts had been gathering intelligence about political leaders and military capabilities. The scandal forced a complete review of security protocols across the entire Commonwealth. In Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, emergency sessions of Parliament were called to assess whether their own institutions had been compromised. The revelation that the British Queen Consort had been a foreign agent raised questions about the security of the entire Commonwealth system. As the first week after the scandal ended, King Charles made a decision that surprised many observers. Rather than retreating from public view, he increased his schedule of public appearances. His advisors had recommended a period of seclusion, but Charles insisted on showing the British people that the monarchy remained strong and committed to service. "I will not hide from this crisis," he told his staff. "The British people deserve to see their king standing strong in the face of betrayal. We will not let foreign enemies destroy our institutions through fear and scandal." His first public appearance after the revelation was at a veterans' hospital in London. The symbolism was intentional, showing support for British service members who had been put at risk by Camilla's betrayal. The reception from both veterans and the public was overwhelmingly supportive. Meanwhile, international intelligence agencies were conducting their own assessments of the damage. The CIA, Mossad, and other allied services had to assume that years of shared intelligence had been compromised. Ongoing operations had to be suspended or completely restructured, costing millions of dollars and potentially years of work. The economic impact was also severe. The pound sterling fell to historic lows against major currencies as international confidence in British institutions wavered. The Bank of England was forced to intervene in currency markets to prevent a complete collapse of financial confidence. However, an unexpected consequence of the scandal was a surge of nationalist feeling among many Britons. Rather than destroying faith in the monarchy, Camilla's betrayal actually strengthened support for King Charles personally, who was seen as a victim rather than a perpetrator. Public demonstrations of support for the king began appearing in cities across the nation. As the legal proceedings against Camilla began to take shape, prosecutors were building what they called the strongest treason case in British history. The evidence was so comprehensive that legal experts predicted a swift conviction and a life sentence in prison. But the most shocking revelations were still to come. Deep in Camilla's encrypted files, investigators found evidence of a much larger conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of European society. The spy network that had placed Camilla in the British royal family was apparently part of a broader operation targeting royal families and government leaders across Europe. The investigation was about to become international in scope, with implications that would shake the foundation of Western democratic institutions for years to come. 6 months after the shocking arrest, the trial of Camilla Parker Bowles began at the Central Criminal Court, known as the Old Bailey. It was designated as the most significant treason trial in British history, with security measures unprecedented for a civilian court. The world watched as the woman who had once been Queen Consort of Britain faced justice for her betrayal. King Charles chose not to attend the trial proceedings, but his written victim impact statement was read to the court. In it, he described the devastating personal cost of discovering that his marriage had been built on lies and espionage. The defendant didn't just betray state secrets, the statement read. She betrayed the trust of a family, the faith of a nation, and the sacred oath she took during our coronation. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence spanning decades of espionage. Financial records showed payments totaling over £30 million from various foreign intelligence services. Recorded conversations revealed Camilla discussing royal family members with clinical detachment, referring to them as assets and targets rather than family. Perhaps most damaging was video evidence from hidden cameras in royal residences. For months before her arrest, MI5 had documented Camilla photographing classified documents, copying computer files, and recording private conversations with family members. The footage showed a woman completely comfortable with her double life, showing no hesitation or guilt as she betrayed those closest to her. Camilla's defense team attempted to argue that she had been coerced into cooperation by foreign agents who threatened her family. However, the prosecution easily demolished this claim by presenting evidence of her voluntary recruitment in the 1970s and her active role in planning operations against British interests. During her testimony, Camilla showed no remorse for her actions. When asked by the prosecutor if she felt any guilt about endangering the royal children, she replied coldly, "I did what was necessary for my mission." Personal feelings were irrelevant. The international implications of the case continued to unfold during the trial. Evidence revealed that Camilla's network had infiltrated royal and government circles across Europe. Similar operations were discovered in Sweden, Netherlands, and Spain, leading to arrests and investigations across the continent. King Charles used the trial period to implement sweeping reforms to royal security and protocols. New background check procedures were established for anyone with access to the royal family. Advanced surveillance technology was installed in all royal residences, and a new protocol required multiple people to witness any handling of classified materials. The reforms extended beyond security measures. Charles announced the creation of a new transparency initiative, allowing controlled public access to certain royal activities and decision-making processes. The goal was to rebuild public trust while maintaining necessary security. Prince William emerged as a crucial figure during this reconstruction period. His steady leadership and clear communication helped stabilize public confidence in the monarchy's future. Opinion polls showed that while trust in the institution had been damaged, confidence in William as the eventual king remained strong. The trial revealed shocking details about Camilla's manipulation of royal family dynamics. She had deliberately fostered conflicts between family members to distract from her activities and create opportunities to gather intelligence. Her role in exacerbating tensions between William and Harry was particularly calculated and cruel. Foreign intelligence experts testified about the sophistication of the operation. "This was not opportunistic espionage," explained a former CIA director. "This was a generational intelligence operation designed to compromise the British monarchy from within. It represents one of the most successful long-term penetration operations in modern history." The psychological impact on the royal family was explored through expert testimony. Child psychologists explained how the younger royals had been systematically observed and analyzed by someone they trusted as a grandmother figure. The long-term effects of this violation of trust were still being assessed. As the trial progressed, public opinion began to consolidate around support for King Charles and the monarchy. The detailed evidence of Camilla's calculated betrayal generated sympathy for the royal family as victims, rather than criticism of them as security risks. Many Britons expressed admiration for Charles's dignity and strength during the crisis. International allies also rallied around Britain during this period. President Biden made a special visit to London to demonstrate American support for the monarchy and British institutions. The visit included a private meeting with King Charles, where the president expressed personal sympathy for the betrayal Charles had endured. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours before returning a unanimous guilty verdict on all charges of high treason, espionage, and conspiracy against the crown. The speed of the decision reflected the overwhelming nature of the evidence presented during the 3-week trial. At sentencing, the judge delivered a scathing assessment of Camilla's crimes. "You infiltrated the most intimate circles of the British state and betrayed secrets that endangered the lives of British citizens and allies around the world. Your actions represent the most serious breach of trust in the modern history of the monarchy." Camilla was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, making her the first person convicted of treason against the British Crown in over 70 years. As she was led from the dock, she showed no emotion and made no statement of remorse. King Charles issued a public statement following the sentencing. Justice has been served, but the work of rebuilding trust and security continues. The monarchy has survived this unprecedented challenge and will emerge stronger, more transparent, and more committed than ever to serving the British people. The international spy network uncovered through Camilla's case led to the largest counterintelligence operation in European history. Over 40 people were arrested across 7 countries, dismantling what intelligence officials called the most sophisticated penetration network since the Cold War. A year after the scandal broke, King Charles remarried in a private ceremony at Windsor Castle. His new wife was Dr. Sarah Matthews, a respected constitutional scholar who had been thoroughly vetted by multiple intelligence agencies. The ceremony was small and private, attended only by immediate family members and closest friends. The wedding represented a new beginning for both the king and the monarchy. Public approval ratings had not only recovered from the scandal, but actually exceeded pre-crisis levels. The British people had witnessed their monarch face the ultimate betrayal with dignity and strength, qualities that enhanced rather than diminished their respect for the institution. The Camilla betrayal became a case study in intelligence schools around the world, analyzed as both a cautionary tale about the vulnerability of democratic institutions and an example of how strong leadership can overcome even the most devastating scandals. King Charles, now in his late 70s, had proven that the monarchy could survive anything when guided by principles of truth, transparency, and service to the people. The crown had faced its greatest test in centuries and emerged not just intact, but renewed and strengthened for the challenges of the future. As Charles looked out from his study window at Windsor Castle on the first anniversary of Camilla's arrest, he reflected on the painful but necessary journey that had brought the monarchy to this point. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also revealed the fundamental strength of British institutions and the enduring bond between the crown and the people it served. The monarchy had survived kings who lost their heads, world wars, and constitutional crises. Now it had survived infiltration by foreign enemies. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Charles was confident that the crown would endure, protected by the truth and sustained by the trust of the British people.